Hello there again. One of the shorter units on the animal side of the course is Unit 11, Nervous System Diseases. As we wrap up getting through the midsection of the course here, let's get to our content that's going to talk about nervous system diseases. The first one you may not think about as a nervous system disease is tetanus. You think about this one generally associated with maybe being injured at some point in time by something rusty. But it is in fact classified as a nervous system disease. It is acute and it is highly infectious. And I have the question mark around the contagious there to ask if it's a contagious disease. Contagious in the fact that one animal with an episode of tetanus, can it pass it to another animal? No, not really likely. Contagious in the fact that if you have a lot of rusty barbed wire fence or rusty nails poking out, rusty screws, rusty tin that animals in at your farm are injuring themselves on, then in fact you could have an outbreak, but highly unlikely to cause what we would think of as a contagious type problem here. But it affects basically everything. All livestock categories here are listed, so no matter your species of preference, pay attention on this particular one. The infectious organism gains entrance to the body then obviously through some kind of traumatized tissue. And most specifically, we're talking about deep wounds. Think of a nail that punctures your skin and kind of goes straight in rather than kind of just scratching the surface. Those are the kind that are most problematic in terms of the wounds that could occur. And it's problematic because on the surface that thing heals quite quickly. That injury on the surface heals quickly. The deeper tissue damage doesn't heal quite as quickly. Plus now, if you get scab development over that puncture wound, now the wound cannot drain appropriately if we have something like that setting in. The second cause that introduces infectious organisms is anytime that you get into some of the treatment methods or management methods that you may choose, whether it's tail docking, castration, shearing, dehorning, etc. Any of those, if you are using utensils that are not properly cleaned and sanitized and maintained, that are allowed to get rusty and nasty between use, they certainly can introduce tetanus into your animals. And I've seen outbreaks happen, and it was an outbreak because I say several animals I saw got it, and they got it because of the utensils that were being used and not because one passed it to the other. Again, this is a bacterial infection in nature, and it's localized. It does not go systemic like some of the other bacterial infections that we talk about through the course, but it gives off a very, very powerful toxin, and some that's 100 times more powerful than a lot of poisons that are known in the industry. And so as that passes along, it goes into the nerves and the spinal cord. This is why it gets classified as a nervous system disease. And it takes maybe just a few days to several weeks after the initial infection, initial injury begins to set in. Generally, the stiffness to moderate pronounced lockjaw, retracted or protracted eyes, ears, and tails can occur with this particular problem as well. If it sets in really rapidly, we've probably got a problem that's going to associate in death, and so recovery sometimes is just around 50%. Very, very bad if you don't get right on top of this one. Prevention, if you notice one of those injuries that has occurred to one of your animals or yourself, thoroughly clean those wounds out. Get some antiseptic procedures. Make sure that your utensils that you use are clean anytime you go into a castrating or a surgery situation, so on and so forth. Make sure that you've taken good management approach and clean your utensils well. Immunity can be raised. You can vaccinate for these kinds of things, but most of the time it's a toxoid or antitoxin that's used for preventative. Most of the time, just good maintenance around your farm is the way to deal with this particular problem. Treatment then is large doses of tetanus antitoxin, sedatives, and care, cleaning out that infection site and getting it open again so that toxin cannot continue to develop, and then probably some systemic antibiotic therapy. Here I've got a diagram that I found of a horse that kind of could have lockjaw, and then the joints stiffen up, so you could find them just kind of standing there in this position. And it's uncommon that this happens anymore. I can't tell you the last time I heard of an animal having tetanus, but it's certainly possible out there on the farm. Next one is pseudorabies, again an acute viral infection when we talk about pigs, cattle, and occasionally sheep. Non-contagious in cattle, but it is highly contagious in swine. So different in how it reacts, and we all know that hogs will bite on each other occasionally, and so pseudorabies, if you introduced into a hog operation, can spread quite quickly when you talk about in a swine barn in that environment. It is a herpes-related virus, and swine are in fact a long-term carrier and have this kind of native to them occasionally. The disease oftentimes just kind of lies in wait, waits for a stressful period, then shows itself. Movement, moving from pen to pen, a slight health stress of another kind, and then boom, now you've got pseudorabies breaking out as well. State blood testing actually is required if you're going to transport swine, especially traveling between herds. It can be airborne for about 2 miles. Clinical symptoms, cattle, have been associated with swine at some juncture can get it. Intense itching at the site of the infection, and newborn pigs, if they get it as young pigs, they'll go from normal to a coma within 24 hours time after onset of the infection. Older swine show some central nervous system, that's what the abbreviation CNS is there, can show some central nervous system symptoms, and we're talking about paralysis, muscle spasms, bumping into things, but then occasionally coupled with that some mild fever, maybe a picky appetite, occasionally some abortion or mummified pigs, and then the open sows are usually hard to settle. They're not good breeders. So prevention is simply vaccination, and there's really no treatment available. So again, another reason why the biosecurity system in the hog business is quite extensive and proactive, because we want to prevent these kinds of things. Next is equine encephalomyelitis, an infectious disease spread by insects, and we're talking primarily mosquitoes. Again, nervous system disorder that's coupled with high mortality rates. And lots of times we're looking at individual cases here unless we have a situation where a high population of mosquitoes is around. And one of the things that you can do to help cut back on this is any old tires or old feed tubs or anything that holds water around your horse barn. Get it dumped out in that summertime whenever we have mosquito pressure. Obviously, that's a great place for the mosquitoes to lay eggs and increase the population on your operation. The cause, again, there's 3 types of this one. It is viral, Western, Eastern, and Venezuelan. The outside 2, the Western and Venezuelan, are the most common type to our area, and there is actually some intermediary host with birds that help this thing develop. So clinical symptoms, again, central nervous system in nature. You'll find impaired vision, some depression, occasional nervousness, and things like that develop, some tremors, and they'll do something really weird, which is lay on their side and gallop. I've never really heard of one do this, but I am told that it does happen. Mild cases can sometimes, the immune system will fight it off. Acute cases die. So we're talking about 50% mortality for the Western strain and 90 to 100% for the Venezuelan strain. I know a few years back, this particular one was one that seemed to be causing an outbreak. There was a large mosquito population that year, and horse owners went out in droves and bought vaccine and vaccinated their horses for it to help prevent it. So again, vaccination, mosquito controls, and cut back on the bird population around your farm if you can as well. Again, not very effective treatment, so mostly supportive therapy. If you have the opportunity to save them, that's the best way to go about it. Anti-inflammatories and things of that nature. Haven't talked much about specific sheep and goat diseases, but one of the most common ones is scrapie, a contagious transmissible agent, that all the way withstands boiling and chemical agents, so quite problematic in sheep and goats, and certainly occurs pretty frequently in some breeds, and we think it does have some tie inheritability. And The Suffolk breeder is actually a DNA test for this one. So clinical symptoms, again, about a 3-week incubation time, but progressively this one sets in. We talked about a progressive disease in soybeans in the last unit of soybean brown stem rot. This one is similar in nature as it progressively kind of eats away at the muscle tissue and deteriorates the muscle tissue, and you'll see hind end weakness set in. The first signs of it, if you pick up on it, is nervousness, excitability, excessive itching to the point where they'll rub the wool or hair completely off of the hide. And so that could get pretty far along before you detect it as anything other than simple lice or itching. There's really no vaccine, just simple slaughter and quarantine for control, and there is no treatment for this. So something to be quite keen on. I believe this is the last disease of this slide set, and BSE, or bovine spongiform encephalopathy, or mad cow disease. Again, slow degenerative disease of the central nervous system. At this point, we don't really know the cause or origin of this disease, and it does in fact infect the brain and spinal tissue. It's not related to the infectious disease of humans, even though that's been offered as theory at times. There is no known directly related mad cow disease problem in humans, and it is not transmitted in the milk, but we do think it could be passed along in the meat, hence why you see some rules nowadays that cattle over 30 months of age have to be identified if they're going to slaughter or going into the rendering business, because they remove the spinal column and the brain out of those animals and make sure that we don't, if they're turned into feed ingredients, we want to make sure not reintroduce that pathogen to the next animal. There is no known treatment or control. Prevention is simply testing and quarantine. There was a pretty extensive mad cow outbreak about 15 to 20 years ago in Europe, and it wiped out a whole bunch of beef cattle. And as you can imagine, at that point in time, a distinctive worry about whether human consumption of beef could cause that problem in humans. And so beef consumption dropped remarkably at that point in time in Europe. The U.S. took extensive measures to put into place some systems in which we could prevent this coming to the U.S., in terms of locking down our borders and no movement of cattle inward to the U.S. without testing and confirmed negatives. And I believe we only have just a few documented cases of suspected positive or positive tests in the U.S., a couple in the southern U.S., and I believe up in the upper Pacific Northwest. There's been a couple cases documented. But fortunately, we've got some controls in place that prevent the spread of this particular problem. And certainly one of the ones that's programs that's been spurred on, especially by mad cow disease, is country of origin labeling, and then tagging and identification of animals, and the premise ID, and so that we can track animals anytime they move from any location, whether it's from your home farm to the fair or your home farm to someone else's farm, being able to track that animal from location to location. So if we ever had an outbreak of something like mad cow disease, you could in fact know where it came from in very short order. So again, that wraps up nervous system diseases. Again, this is probably one section that if you encountered any one of these cases in your lifetime, in your career of handling livestock, that is probably unique. Not one that's common, like metabolic diseases or digestive system diseases, or certainly respiratory diseases. So that wraps up Unit 11, AGRC 223, Nervous System Diseases.